Bankole Adewale was never meant to belong. At least that's what the world had always told him. Born with autism in a home that demanded strength, he quickly learned that silence was his safest refuge. Words often failed him, emotions tangled in his throat before they could escape. But the world could have never prepared for what happened when Bankolé found a different kind of language. As a child, he found himself fascinated by sounds. From the static hum of the broken radio in his small bedroom to the sound of an Okada zooming off on the main road. He found that their sounds were often more comforting than the voices that backed at him to be tougher, stronger. It was in the rhythm of the dripping rain and the deep vibration of his mother's humming as she cooked, he found solace. But it wasn't until he stumbled upon an old broken guitar in his father's garage. Then did he truly find himself. As a boy, Bankolé watched street and party musicians with a hunger beyond admiration. It was in need. The way their fingers danced over their drums, bending and churning sounds into something tangible, fascinated him. When he found the discarded guitar, which would go on to become his new best friend, he took it to his room, replacing the broken strings with his sister Bukola's beading wires. The first sound he pulled from it was painful, sharp, distorted and wrong. But he wasn't disheartened. He kept playing, kept practicing until he produced pleasant sound. His parents saw this as an obsession, another fixation he would get over. But this time, he was fighting for this. He wouldn't let them take it away. By 18, his hands had hardened with calluses, and his music had taken on a life of its own. More than just sound. It was his voice. He played in hidden corners for himself, for ghosts of his silent childhood. One evening, however, while he was playing to himself in his backyard, a young girl sneakily recorded him. The video went viral. Comments poured in. People called him the Phantom Strings, the nameless, faceless musician whose melodies stirred something raw in their souls. But despite the fame and virality, Bankolé had never played for an audience. Not really. Not until he met Aisha. Aisha was everything he was not. She was bold, radiant, a storm wrapped in human form. She saw things in him others ignored. Their first conversation wasn't with words but with music. He had been playing under a tree in their university campus when she came and stood by to study and watch him, listening as though she could hear the things he couldn't say. "I've never heard anything like this before," she murmured, eyes fixed on his fingers. He hesitated, unsure if he should respond because he wasn't much of a people person, and he wasn't sure if she would understand him. "It is everything I can't say out loud," he finally admitted. Her smile was soft and understanding. "Then keep playing." And so he did, for her, with her. They spent nights unraveling melodies, bonding over musical tabs, and fascinating chords. Her presence wrapped around him like a warmth he had never known. She taught him to speak in ways that had nothing to do with words, and for the first time he began to believe in something more, something that went beyond survival, something he had never thought possible. He had unveiled what it felt like to be truly alive. March 13th, 2024. The morning news headlines shone like a blinding headlight. daughter of minister, faces persecution for defying tradition. Aisha had been taken. Her father, a powerful politician, had tried to silence her for daring to love beyond the boundaries set for her, for choosing freedom over control, and now she was facing punishment, locked away under the guise of tradition and law. But Bankolé knew better. It was fear. Fear of change. Fear of voices that refused to be silent. And for the first time he was afraid too, not for himself, but for her. Bankolé sat in his dim, lit apartment, staring at his guitar and pondering what action he could take to conquer the situation. It was new and tricky. What was he to do? How does an autistic boy, who no one truly pays attention to, make the world listen? His fingers trembled. He had never been good with people, or fighting battles beyond the one inside his own mind. But this was different. He had to do something. His phone beeped with a notification, and once he clicked, it was an Instagram post with the hashtag Save Aisha. People were speaking, but not loud enough. The notification, however, struck a brilliant idea in Bankolé's mind. The university was holding a festival. On the night of the festival, Bankolé took up to the stage bravely, standing before a sea of people, the weight of the moment pressing against his ribs, his anxiety creeping down his neck. He was freaking out. But he closed his eyes, inhaled deeply. In that moment, he realized that this was no longer about him. It was for everyone who didn't have a voice, anyone who couldn't speak up for themselves. It was beyond him or Aisha. Holding onto the microphone with his guitar around his shoulder, he said in a soft but audible voice, "This is for everyone who was ever told they had no voice." Then he played. He played and sang his heart's worth. His fingers bled, but he didn't stop. His music was agony, love, defiance. Each note was a cry, a war cry, a plea. The audience held its breath. It was as if his music and his lyrics spoke to their soul. They heard him. His language was sound, and the moment felt transcendent. His performance was captured live by the audience, and he was going viral on Instagram and all social platforms. Hashtag Save Aisha was a viral headline. And somewhere in the political house where Aisha was being held, she watched him live on TV. His performance drew the attention of some very powerful people, both internationally and locally. They were moved to intervene, and eventually, after a tedious process, Aisha was released. Much to the distaste of her father, Aisha walked free, chains moved, and her spirit unbroken. And so the world cheered. Bankole had pulled off something incredible. As soon as the news of Aisha's release hit the headline, Bankole laid flat on his room floor, enjoying the euphoria of his victory. The incident had healed many, and many were grateful for Bankole and Aisha's bravery. Their story inspired many. It had an emotional lesson on fighting for the things that matter, regardless of limitations.